Hi, Rashonda Cade here. We are reading Hagar's Daughter by Pauline Hopkins. We had a bit of a hiatus. I had a lot going on in my family, but I'm trying to get us back on track. So we're going to dive in with chapter 25. As the day grew older, the excitement increased in the city over the murder of Elise Bradford. The circumstances surrounding the victim, as given out in the second editions of the press, the mysterious disappearance of the old scrub woman, and the high social and official position of the accused gave rise to all sorts of sensational rumors. Very queer affair, said one man to another, nodding significantly. A good deal behind it all, of course. Young men will be young men. You can't put an old head on young shoulders, he added, repeating the trite sayings as if they were original with himself. Yes, ugly facts, though, the wine glasses especially. I take it the old negress would be an important witness in the case. Yes. What about the wine glasses? I haven't read the paper very carefully, just sketched it. Why, it seems they must have had wine together and he put prussic acid in her glass. But he denies it, says he gave her a glass of wine because she seemed faint, but he took none himself. In short, he cannot explain the presence of the second glass. The odd thing about it is his walking out and leaving the body there, if he did it with no attempt at concealment. You don't say so. By Jove, what did he expect? And he claims to be innocent? Yes, but of course he'd do that. I suppose his lawyers will claim that it was suicide. Fact is, he must have found himself in a mess and took this method of getting clear. These young bloods are as bad as the worst when you corner them. It must have been that way. And then again, what he says must be true somehow. From what one hears of him, he is incapable of a crime like this. He is called a man of spotless honor. Well, perhaps, except where there's a woman in the case. We are men ourselves, and we know. The other nodded in acquiescence. Will Badger and Carol West met in the corridor of the jail, one just coming from a conference with the prisoner, the other seeking an interview. Kind-hearted Badger was feeling very much cast down over his friend's predicament. Think he did it, Badger? Asked West after they had exchanged greetings. No more than you or I, was the decisive answer. I would not believe the blackest evidence against his bare word. I know the man. I'm with you, but, well, confound the jade, I say, to get Summer in this fix. Of course there's another man. Who is he? Have you an idea? And so we're assuming another man did it. I mean, maybe. I don't know. I'll keep reading. Badger shook his head and sighed. The examination is tomorrow at 10. Try and be there, West. I will, sure. The Madisons awfully cut up over this affair. She was almost in hysterics when I stopped in to talk it over. The major isn't himself either. No wonder. Well, we shan't know anything positive until after the hearing. So long. The friends separated. Shortly after noon, Jewel arrived at the jail. The interview between her and Cuthbert was long and painful, but both were happier than they had been for many weeks. Sumner told Jewel the facts of his intimacy with Amelia, blaming himself greatly for all the trouble that had followed his first deception. Wasn't her name Aurelia? Oh yeah, but she was also called Amelia. Okay. Well, Aurelia, Amelia, it's probably just some editing quaffs. Sumner told Jewel the facts of his intimacy with Amelia, blaming himself greatly for all the trouble that had followed his first deception. I should have been frank with you, Jewel, and all would have been well. Jewel's gentle heart was at last at rest. Perfect confidence was established between the reunited lovers. As she rose to go, he said, "It may go hard with me tomorrow at the examination. Indeed, I know it will. There will be difficult work ahead for my attorneys. So many things have happened to separate us, Jewel, that I dread the future." The tears stood in her eyes. She turned her head to hide them. Dare I express my selfish hopes, my wishes? For answer, she threw herself into his arms again, and as he held her thus, he whispered his request with an eager look upon his face. She blushed violently, hesitated, then drawing herself up proudly, said, "I will do as you wish. Tomorrow morning, then at 8, I shall be waiting." I wonder what he whispered to her. I will not fail you, was her low reply, as snatching her hand hastily from his detaining clasp, she turned to accompany the officer from the cell. As she passed through the office, she asked the captain for the address of the chief of the Secret Service. You mean Mr. Henson, I take it, miss? If he is the celebrated detective, he is the very one. Well, miss, it's number something, Pennsylvania Avenue, but he takes no outside cases. His government duties are all that he finds time for. So I said number something. I don't know if you can, I can't see my camera anymore now that I'm showing this. Oh, there it is. Number something. It's just a blank. That was actually pretty common in literature at this period, to not give an exact number or something. And so they would just leave a blank. Kind of like how phone numbers on movies and stuff. I'll start with 555. Okay. So, well, miss, it's number something on Pennsylvania Avenue, but he takes no outside cases. His government duties are all that he finds time for. Still, I will call on him. The man bowed and she passed on. Months ago, she remembered hearing her father speak of the great powers of this detective. Why it had lingered in her mind, she knew not, but now a hidden force impelled her to seek his aid. She shrank from nothing that might benefit her lover. Shrink? Was that like it? The proud flush on the soft cheek, the warm light in her eyes? Her heart throbbed fast in the excess of happiness it was to know that he was true, that all misunderstandings were buried specters, and that she alone, held his heart. Let the world do its worst. She could repay by showing every trust in him. After tomorrow, she would have the right to stand beside him, though all the world should frown. Her thoughts did not go beyond the present. He would be proved innocent, she was sure. Money could do anything, and there would be no sparing of any moment to clear him. The verdict seemed to creep over the space between the station and the detective's chambers. Her very heart seemed on fire under intense, suppressed excitement and the emotion that surged beneath her calm, conventional exterior. Number blank Pennsylvania Avenue was a large brick building where lawyers congregated. Jewel alighted from the verdict, leaving Venus in it. Mr. Henson's office was on the second floor. She paused before a door upon the glass panels of which appeared the letters, J. Henson, Detective. She opened the door and entered. There were a number of clerks in the room busily writing. One elderly man near the door was in charge. Yes, Mr. Henson was in, and would no doubt see the lady if she could wait a while, he said in reply to Jewel's inquiry. Placing a chair for her, he took her card and disappeared behind a door marked private. Presently he returned, saying that she would come with him. Mr. Henson would receive her. The great detective was seated at his desk writing. He did not look up as she entered, but said, Be seated, madam. I will give you my attention in one moment. Jewel saw a well-preserved man of 60-odd years, middle height and rather broad, but not fleshy. His thick iron gray hair covered his head fully and curled in masses over a broad forehead. He was well and carefully dressed. Presently, he looked up from his work and glanced in her direction. Then she saw that he had expressive dark eyes and a pleasant face which might have been handsome in youth, but for a long livid scar that crossed his face diagonally. A saber might have made that deep, dangerous cut. The light in the room was faint, and Jewel did not perceive the pallor that spread over the man's face as he gazed at her. The words he was about to utter died away unsaid. His chest heaved an instant in a convulsive movement which he controlled by a violent effort. There was silence as the man and girl gazed at each other, mutually attracted by a hidden affinity. It was but a second that the pause endured. Color me curious. You wish to speak to me, miss? Then Jewel aroused herself from the spell which had held her since she encountered the piercing gaze of the quiet elderly man before her. The sound of his voice generated a feeling of relief in her breast, of trust and confidence. She could not analyze the sensation of complete rest that came to her with the few words just spoken. I wish to speak with you, she replied tremulously. Then recovering herself, when I say that I am deeply interested in the murder that has just been committed and that Mr. Sumner is my dearest friend, You will know what I want. I understand, Miss Bowen, he said, glancing at the card in his hand. I seldom take cases outside of the government. Still, I will hear what you have to tell me. I think this may be an exception to my rule. He motioned her to the chair beside him and then placed a notebook on the desk before him. Mr. Sumner is innocent, said the girl in a trembling voice. He will have able counsel, I know, but I shall feel better if you will take charge. I have heard so much of your skill and wonderful powers of discernment that no one else could satisfy me. The man looked at the beautiful girl before him with something akin to worship in his eyes. When he spoke again, his voice had taken on added softness. His words seemed to carry a caress hidden beneath their commonplace utterance. Thank you. I am greatly interested. Even the newspaper accounts bear evidence that this is a remarkable case, and there is generally a good deal hidden behind what they give out. Now, tell me all you know of the matter. Calmed by his gentle tones, Jewel gave a brief account of the affair as told her by Sumner. When she ceased speaking, Mr. Henson, who had listened with downcast eyes and unmoved countenance, said, It is a curious case, very. There seems no clue, but if I mistake not, you have suspicions of someone. His eyes rested on her face in a peculiarly impressive manner. Why do you think so? I trace it in the tones of your voice. Now, tell me the name of the person you suspect and why. The girl hesitated, then said in a low tone, General Benson. Ah! It was but a breath, but it spoke volumes. And have you mentioned this to anyone? Only to Mr. Sumner, but he will not entertain the thought. He thinks the idea absurd because the general is in New York and can hardly know more than the bare outlines of the case as yet. Just so. But upon what do you base your thought? Oh, Mr. Henson, and she clasped her hands and raised her wonderful beseeching gray eyes to his face. I cannot tell. There is a feeling of conviction that he knows all about the crime if he is not the assassin. There has been an adverse fate at work since General Benson crossed my path. There has been a train of unfortunate circumstances attending our whole acquaintance. It is absurd to suspect him, I know, but I cannot help it. The detective looked at her again with the immovable expression peculiar to him. Your woman's intuition warns you? Is that it? She bowed her head in acquiescence. And I have confidence in intuitive deductions, he muttered. Then aloud, My dear child, gentlemen like General Benson sometimes do queer things under pressure of circumstances. You may be right. I will see Mr. Sumner. He will probably be more explicit with me than he could be with you. I will do my best for you. In fact, I shall put all my powers into my work, for it is an uncommon riddle you have set me to solve. As she rose to go, she asked his terms. He named a fair price. But if you succeed in clearing him, and I know that you will, Mr. Henson, you shall receive a princely reward. Jewel laid her check for a goodly retainer upon the desk before him. Henson looked and tapped the desk with his pencil, but did not notice the check. Then he rose, touched a bell, and accompanied his fair client to the door. Then there's a break. Before 9 o'clock on Tuesday morning, attended by her maid with the jail officials for witnesses, Jewel Bowen became the wife of the suspected murderer, Cuthbert Sumner. To be continued. I figured that was what he had whispered to her, but I wasn't sure. So that was, what chapter was that? That was chapter 25. That's it for today. Until next time.